All right, we are here on Facebook. Thank you very much, Mr. McLogan. I'm speaking to Greg McLogan, an alumni of the class of 1988, currently the Director of Banking and Financial Services at Ingok Search Group. Thank you very much, Mr. McLogan, for meeting with us today to discuss LinkedIn and networking after leaving college.
My pleasure. It's great to be with you all.
Yeah, well, it's a great opportunity to be able to talk to you. And today we wanted to first start, if it's okay with you, asking about why you think LinkedIn is an important part of career building in the future. My understanding is, a lot of students, what they're primarily concerned about especially when they come to career services, is their resume, cover letters, and they apply to jobs. LinkedIn is sometimes one of the things that gets left behind. Why do you think LinkedIn is an important tool to use when you're building a platform to promote yourself?
Boy, I wish I had LinkedIn back when I was in school. It's really an amazing tool. So I think the importance of networking is to be able to connect with people and really help pursue your short-term and long-term goals. For instance, if I had this when I was in school, I originally wanted to be a journalist. I was the editor of the Collegian and ended up pursuing sales and wound into HR. But you could find someone whose long-term career you want to be in, and then you could really, literally, since it's like an online resume, scroll through their experience and see, what education and what work experience got them to where they are today. And that's a great way to start.
Yeah. So for somebody who gets a LinkedIn account, what are some things on there? If you were to name, let's say, the top 3 things or the top 5 things that you think are important to update on that profile for your future employer, what would you say those things are?
I think for a college student, definitely a good picture. You want to get it doesn't cost a lot of money to get a professional picture done. And we've done things there in Hillsdale to have a professional photographer come in and take some pictures, which is great. Also, trying to put in some work experience like internships, maybe getting some recommendations from some people that serve as references. And then it's important to give references as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think highlighting your activities on campus is always good as for probably the last point.
So how much would you say then that people pay attention to like endorsements of specific skills and whatnot? Is that important as well?
That's really not a big deal.
Yeah.
Anybody can do that. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
I would rather see a recommendation of someone's internship work or something like that really speaks to their abilities and gives more details.
So people actually post a recommendation like publicly online, and then any employers can look at it. Is that how that works? Or
Yes. For instance, our firm just completed a search for a chief executive officer in Chicago, and one of my clients gave me a nice recommendation about our search on it.
Great, excellent. So in your own line of field, so you mentioned back when you were at Hillsdale, they didn't exactly have LinkedIn. Speaking to Greg McLogan, a graduate of 1988. So has it affected already though your own career path? Would you say, or do you use it yourself when you're selecting people to hire in your own field of expertise?
Yeah, I use it a lot. LinkedIn makes most of their money from companies and search firms. We post jobs. We pay for special access. I have a LinkedIn recruiter account, which means I can send anyone on LinkedIn, LinkedIn email or InMail, they call it, a message, and I can look at everyone's profiles. And that really is an excellent source of information. So, for instance, I have a search going on in Grand Rapids, Michigan right now. I'll pull up, do a search, and then I can save those into a project, send them an InMail, and follow up with a phone call, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, in addition to LinkedIn, and we're talking about, we're moving into this conversation of other networking opportunities. Some now in current times, there's been talk about, also having online portfolios as well. Do you think that it's a good idea to have like your own website, let's say, with your personal information on it and, kind of a portfolio of your work depending on the field you're into? Or do you think that using a platform like LinkedIn is better? Is there one that's better than the other?
Yeah, I think it's nice to have a website, especially depending on the work you do. For a banking and finance person, probably not, but maybe for someone who's more creative and artsy, That's definitely a plus. And you can upload your resume on LinkedIn. You can even put together. You can upload a PowerPoint presentation maybe you've done. I've seen senior thesis on there and things like that.
That's really cool. So moving into networking in general, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice you have regarding networking and what people can do to better help prepare themselves once they're leaving college and moving into the real world of looking for a permanent career position?
Yeah, I think don't be afraid to ask questions. So, for instance, this Friday we're having a career event, and I would encourage people to come up, introduce yourself, and ask questions about how people got into their field of study, what they chose. I think at this point in your career, in college, you're trying to figure out what your passion is and what your expertise is, and really to follow that. So, and using LinkedIn, you can introduce yourself. A lot of people will connect with me, and then I'll never hear from them again. So I would encourage people to follow up a note and say, hey, thanks for accepting my LinkedIn invite. I would like to chat with you for a minute, or I'm trying to find an internship at such a company. Would you mind introducing myself? Because I can introduce someone in my network. And so if you're not directly connected to that person, you can ask somebody for an introduction that way. And so there's different ways of networking, but the main thing is, don't be shy, be assertive, but not aggressive, and try to help the person if you can. I always try, if I can't help a person directly, I try to point them in the right direction and maybe introduce them to a friend who might be able to be more of assistance.
Great. And then in addition to LinkedIn, do you think there's other tools that people should be utilizing when they're, networking, let's say in person with somebody? I mean, you mentioned, being assertive. Do people, are business cards helpful? Would you say, do you try to connect with them on the spot there, or is it better to, just ask for an email and follow up that way? Or would you recommend, primarily communicating through platforms like LinkedIn because they're easier?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great tool, but I've had people give me a business card, which is nice, and they're pretty cheap. Gives your email, maybe some information, and then you could follow up with an email that way and get their resume. It doesn't hurt to be creative these days.
Right. Now we have not just so students who are coming out, let's say, out of college. Maybe this webinar, what I'm trying to say is, primarily for students who are maybe still attending Hillsdale, but we also have some alumni watching who have already graduated. Do you have any specific advice for those who are maybe, more general advice for what they should be doing as they're looking for a permanent career?
Yeah, I tell people, don't be afraid to contact the Career Services Department at Hillsdale. We have a great alumni network group that we've developed on Hillsdale. I think we have over 3,000 to 4,000 members, which is great. You can really, it's easy to search on LinkedIn. So recently I did Hillsdale College Banking Chicago, and I connected with some people I hadn't spoken to before about some opportunities I was recruiting there for. And it's really easy to learn, and I would encourage people to study that.
Mm-hmm. What about now? I've also heard, there is the option to get a paid LinkedIn account, have those premium features. Do you think that's a necessary thing you need to do in order to get ahead, or is it that necessary?
I don't think it's necessary. It couldn't hurt. If you're actively in the search, it could be a plus, especially if you're trying to maybe move from Detroit to Chicago, or go to a place where you don't have as many contacts. That might be helpful to pay for that for 3 months or so.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. McLogan. We've been speaking with Mr. McLogan today about LinkedIn and networking. He's a director of banking financial services at Angok Search Group and a graduate of the class of 1988. Do you have any last words or last pieces of advice you'd like to give before we conclude today's interview?
Yep. Not everyone is an extrovert, and so not everyone's assertive, and I understand that. And so for introverted people, I would just say, talk to your friends and family first, get them to introduce you to other people, especially related to your field, and really pursue, what you're passionate about. I've talked to people who, one guy became a lawyer because his dad was a lawyer, and then 10 years later, he was pretty miserable and ended up doing a complete different career change. So you don't necessarily have to follow in your parents' footsteps. You really need to find out what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and really pursue that. And then you're going to really enjoy the work that you do.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. McLogan. It was really a pleasure speaking with you. And we look forward to seeing you at Hillsdale's campus. I believe it's this Thursday, correct?
For our coming down Thursday night, and we'll be there all weekend for homecoming, and then of course the career event on Friday. I'm looking forward to it. So
great. Well, excellent.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks.
So this is the second interview that's been part of our webinar series, our career services webinar series. It's been with Greg McLogan. If you're just tuning in now, we invite you to rewind and watch the full thing. It talks all about LinkedIn and networking in general. We have more webinars to come next week, Monday at 8 p.m. live on the Hillsdale College Career Services Facebook page. Thank you very much, and have a nice night.
Thanks, everyone.